And on the next click, the public will start filtering in as attendees. And here we go. We are live, we're recording, and we're ready to roll, I think.
Terrific. Well, hello, fellow commissioners and staff and the public listening online. Welcome to the April workshop for the Colorado State Board of Land Commissioners. And we're hosting a virtual session today to discuss the strategic plan that has been underway for most of 2026. So we will be hosting a robust discussion on that with the commissioners and the staff and the consultants. But sadly, we don't facilitate public comment on workshops. So our director, Nicole Rosemarino, will give you instructions on how to provide any comments following the webinar. So let me do a roll call and then we'll pass it over to the director. Commissioner Harvey, Commissioner Heath, Commissioner Scanlon, and Commissioner Pribble.
Yeah.
All right, I see you all. Good to see you. All right, with that, Director Rosemarino, take it away.
Thank you, President Frobe. Good afternoon, everyone. We're really pleased to hold this special workshop for the State Board of Land Commissioners. The purpose is really to provide the board and the public with a preview of this important planning effort in advance of the May board workshop and meeting where the board will take formal action on the plan. I'd like to thank our guests and the public for joining us. Our purpose for today is really to share with you and our commissioners the excellent work being done to develop the State Land Board's next 5-year strategic plan to guide the agency through 2031. And this is our opportunity to receive feedback from our commissioners in an open session. As is our practice, and as Chair Frobe mentioned, there is no public comment at today's workshop. The next step will be for staff to consider the board's feedback and present another workshop on May 13th, followed by a final decision item at the May 14th business meeting. There is an opportunity for our partners and members of the public to offer comment to the board in advance of and during that May 14th meeting. We always appreciate when folks utilize the online forum to submit comments. And of course, you're also welcome to join us during the meeting, which will be both online and here in person at our Denver headquarters at 1127 Sherman Street. So save those dates, May 13th for the board workshop and May 14th for the board meeting. For today, I invite you to listen and consider our efforts. And if you have any questions, I very much welcome you reaching out to me directly. I'll put my email in the chat, so you can always have a direct line to me. For your comments to be integrated into the May board workshop, please contact me by April 30th with any feedback you have. I really look forward to hearing from any of you that want to provide questions or comments or concerns or enthusiasm about what we've come up with. And this will really give us an opportunity to consider your feedback well in advance of the board's decision on this plan in May. And so with that, I would like to turn it over to Deputy Director Nick Massey.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I think it was the February meeting, Commissioner Pribble asked for an opportunity to look back over strategic planning efforts from the past, our current plan specifically. And so as part of the board packet, staff presented a summary assessment of where we were with the current plan. I want to acknowledge that, given a choice between giving a full deep accounting of what's happened on each single goal, as opposed to sort of a summary sense of how we were doing on those goals, I chose the latter because we've done robust report outs annually with our business goals for the last, I guess, 8 years. And it felt a bit daunting to try to compress that into an accountability document. And so what we've been provided is staff's assessment of where things sort of stand with each of the goals and the objectives under those goals. Having provided that, I wanted to sort of poll the board to see, is there a desire to go through these line by line, or saving as much time as we can for feedback on the drafted goals? Did we want to just touch on a few things, or let's see, Commissioner Pribble, you raise your hand.
Well, my first cut, Nick, thank you and staff. This is a very adequate response to my question. And I mean, I would reserve the right as I peruse these a second time to pose perhaps some questions downstream. But for the moment, initial read, I'm quite satisfied. I mean, it gives us newcomers especially, well, it gives everybody on the board a sense of, okay, exactly as you've assigned these categories: accomplished, discard, or carry on. So
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks for that input. Appreciate it. Commissioner Heath?
Yes, thank you. One of the aspects of that Goal 1 financial trusteeship that is in the carryover category, I think is really important. And that's, I'm on Goal 1, Item D, where we talk about changing consideration of extracted mineral estate revenues to asset sales. And whoops, I think I've lost you all. Anyway, I thought that was such an important observation, not observation, but acknowledgement that we made, and that it's really important that as we talk about our strategy for the next 5 years, that we talk about it in that same way as asset depletion regarding oil and gas.
Great. And just checking, am I currently showing that Goal 1 results page to the?
And it's Goal 1 and it's D.
But on the Zoom, are you seeing me share Goal 1, the green page?
Yes. It says change consideration of extracted mineral estate from revenues to asset sales.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Heath, for that comment. You know, one of the certainly staff is supportive of continuing to try to pursue that effort. That's a really interesting challenge, because the determination of mineral revenue as anything but an asset sale is not directly in our hands. So the effort is in our hands. The outcome is not, and so we'll continue to pursue that kind of change, and we'll see it moving forward.
I mean, I think it's an obvious thing for all of us, staff and board, but I think we haven't always talked about it in that way. And I hope as we talk about the strategies for the coming years, we can make sure that the public understands it as well.
Yeah, you bet. So I wanted to just say a couple of sort of overarching comments about the plan that we're they're moving on from. We're moving forward into the new plan, having addressed an existing plan. Some of the energies that were present as we formed the plan that's on the screen were a bit defensive and a bit desiring of trying to educate the folks who didn't know us well. So we used a lot of language. We were 8 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we were starting to feel, we were starting to interact with the public and with stakeholders in a new way, and they were using language that was sometimes incorrect. There were efforts around legislative relationships where we were seeing problematic language, or we saw an opportunity to correct misunderstandings. And so throughout this plan, a lot of our goals were framed in a way of sort of trying to set the record straight. Um, I think there's still some of that energy out in the world, but I think in large part, and we'll talk about it in the next version of the plan, that we feel like we're trying to step into more of the aspirational entrepreneurial language and energy that will carry us forward into continuing to do the good work that we do. And we just acknowledge that correcting misunderstanding is part of good business. We just need to address that in every opportunity we can. I wanted to acknowledge that even though we put the dates of 2019 to 2026 on the plan, this sort of style or these sort of four pillars of this plan had existed for a couple of years, maybe many years before this version of the plan. These were concepts that were building strength over time and had been captured in strategic planning documents previous to this document, but this is what we've relied on in a nice cardstock version for the last 7 years, 8-ish years. Yeah, so those are just some bigger comments. I just wanted to touch on a couple items from this goal. 1B, set goal for long-term inflation adjusted growth of the permanent fund. We marked it as a discard, not because the efforts aren't important, but it was pointing at an outcome that we don't have enough control over. Staff continue to make every effort, and we still have a position on the permanent fund board to make sure that that body is pursuing the best growth possible to achieve lots of goals. But it's a little bit out of the hands of state land board staff. So we marked it as a discard. It's better placed on a different body. I wanted to acknowledge that item C from this page, set long-term asset allocation targets, is exactly what we're trying to do with the RFP that we've just seen the deadline on Friday for submissions. We're looking for the right partner to help us accomplish the comprehensive asset allocation project. And that will address this very sentiment strongly in a way that we have not in the past. And then I also wanted to touch on item E, assess management plans for large physical assets. This has become second nature for the years from your state land board staff. And it's marked as carry forward because we want to do more with this. We want to be more detailed, more intentional with how we're managing large physical assets, the big ranches, as well as everything else. There's an opportunity for staff to step a little deeper into the management of a vast inventory of improvements across the state, and we can be more intentional about it. So, unless anybody had any specific points or questions on this goal, I'm going to jump to goal 2. Great. Goal 2 is our real property stewardship goal. It's at the center of just about everything we do at the State Land Board. With pretty much across the board, we acknowledge that we've accomplished a significant amount of work in these components as regards land management and species and habitat management and rehabilitation and mitigation and all these good efforts. And we want to carry all these energies forward. Each of these components speaks strongly to doing the best business possible we can with our land assets. And so in the refreshed goals, the draft plan as we presented it, these energies are behind everything that's presented. And so I actually didn't have specific ones I wanted to dig into, but here again, I'm happy to address any questions or comments anybody have. Seeing none, move into 3. The big red goals. One of the things that, so this was the goal that represented being stronger at doing business, organizational excellence, being good at people, being good at process, being good at technology. A lot of discussion over the last many weeks among the planning team has acknowledged that there's really an opportunity to make sure that organizational excellence and the next goal about communication are an undercurrent for everything else that's happening in the plan. So in the new plan, and we'll talk about it, communications as a separate set of goals did not survive, but is instead incorporated into all of the other goal areas. And in terms of organizational excellence, we've pointed at some of the same goals, the same components, but are being really intentional about upping the ante towards the people that make up the organization. I wanted to touch on a couple of things from this one. 3A, invest and apply the best technology to support operations. The board over the years has been incredibly supportive of staff building up our NetSuite enterprise system that we call Atlas. Atlas does more for us every day, and we are super grateful to Sharon Ernest from staff, who makes Atlas a phenomenal tool. It's appropriate for us to be thinking about what Atlas looks like next. Atlas was designed in 2013 and rolled out in 2014. And if that sounds like a long time in the world of technology, it is. I think in 2013, we were on iPhone 3, maybe iPhone 4, and now we're on 15, 16, 17. I forget which number. But a lot has changed, and we want to make sure that we continue to pay attention to the kinds of technology that will make our work strong and reduced effort. So NetSuite plays a role, or something that looks like NetSuite plays a role moving forward. Item B on there is implement human resources best practice. Interestingly, 2019, 2020, there were some new energies coming forward in the world. Obviously, I think we cast this strategic plan before the COVID pandemic hit, and we had to change a lot of the things we do overnight. But it's been important to staff to make sure that we continue to keep people at the center of the things that we do, because without our people, we don't get anything done. And so in the sense of things like professional development, we've continued to set aside some money every year to make sure that folks can approach professional development that helps them be stronger in building stakeholders in their business, in terms of their knowledge base, to make sure that they're keeping on top of the current best practices for the work that they do. And that will absolutely carry forward into the new plan. We want to make sure we're doing that and more. And then I just wanted to touch on item E, which was lean operations. And when I joined the organization in 2017, we were in the midst of adoption across the state of a lean operations process we call SOLVE. And SOLVE is a framework that allows us to step into analysis for all the things that we do, all the processes that we have in place to do the work that we do, and figure out, can we improve them? Can we find ways to make them more consistent, more repeatable, and require less effort? And so as an organization, we jumped in with both feet and made sure that we're always thinking about how to improve the things that we're doing so that we are sustainable and successful. And that, we want to make sure that at the end of the day, the places where we're spending the most resource is on the high value add activity, thinking about ways to solve business problems and not having to worry too much about how those problems get solved, in the machine. So looking forward to continuing to keep lean process improvement at the heart of the things we're doing. I'll pause for a second and again, see any comments or questions. And none immediately, so pop to item 4. So goal 4, communications and outreach. I mentioned on this previous slide that this is going to be one of the underpinnings of all good business moving forward. We know that communications is at the heart of building your customer base, is celebrating the work that you're doing, communicating the good work of the organization to a larger audience. There's always room to be better at telling our story. And so we continue to have a dedicated position in Emily Barbeau to engage with our communications processes and practices. But as a standalone goal, I think we agreed as a planning group, a planning team, that it would be okay if we let go of communications as a standalone goal or standalone set of goals. And so our hope is that you'll see the energy of communicating our work to our audiences and developing our audiences in the way that in the goals that have been drafted and shared. So that is kind of where I wanted to leave us with my remarks. Wanted to leave lots of time for discussion if it's certainly welcome. And happy to move forward as you see fit. Commissioner Frobe, I saw you come off mute.
No, I was just preparing because I think you're going to end up tossing it over to me when you're finished. But thank you very much for your remarks.
Director Rose Marino, did you want to?
I was gonna segue to the next Chair Frobe if everyone's done responding to Nick's presentation on the current strategic plan.
And sorry, y'all, I had to log off and log on. We're having horrible Wi-Fi up in Keystone today. This may happen again. And every time I'm Nicole. just let folks know.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, looks like no questions. I can't see everybody.
Okay, well, with your permission, Chair Frobe, I'll do a little launch on our new strategic planning effort and then hand it over to you. That sounds good.
Sounds good.
Wonderful. So thank you, Nick. That was really helpful, I think, in setting the stage on where we're at to inform where we're going. We're really excited to share the core strategic plan components that we've developed. These were created through extensive internal and external communications and a reflection on where the current strategic plan that Nick just reviewed for us has really served our agency well in many areas. So the Strategic Planning Committee working on the new strategic plan consists of staff leadership. And so that's myself, Deputy Director Nick Massey, Assistant Directors Elliot Hoyt and Chris Smith, and our Public Information Officer Emily Barbeau, as well as Board President Frobe. So together we've worked extensively with Government Performance Solutions, who we will introduce shortly. Their acronym is GPS. And we're aiming at ensuring a broad range of stakeholders have helped inform the plan from the very outset. The stakeholders consulted include a long list with a number of state agencies, industry groups spanning oil and gas, renewable energy, agriculture, recreation, also conservation organizations, local governments, and crucially, our beneficiaries. We've invited these stakeholders and the public here today to share how these ideas have been incorporated into a revamped mission, vision, and goals for the Colorado State Land Board. And I must say that GPS has been just excellent at distilling down dozens of conversations and interviews into themes, insights, and frankly, tensions that we shared with the board and public at the February board workshop. And just as a reminder, some important themes that came through from these efforts include the need to diversify revenue. And we all know that our sources of revenue are far too concentrated, thus leaving our current and future beneficiaries exposed to financial uncertainty. It's imperative that we build up more of our lines of business and be comprehensive in how we approach asset allocation. Next, a focus on stewardship. Participants recognize that this is critical to our mission, and we need to be able to implement and demonstrate tangible results, given our constitutional obligations to ensure the long-term productivity of our land assets. Next, benefits of communication. As Nick touched on, there's this is critical and pervades all of our work, and there's broad support for our mission and wide recognition of the excellence of our staff in striving to fulfill it. So it's vital that we share our stories more broadly and increase our visibility. Next, increased capacity. There's recognition across all sectors that we need increased staff capacity. We have an important and weighty charge, and we simply need more bandwidth to continue excelling and meeting it. And finally, the importance of this strategic planning effort. In designing this process, we have prioritized broad internal and external engagement, including all state land board staff, other state agencies, and a broad suite of stakeholders that I mentioned earlier. And I'm grateful for the time, energy, and insights we're gaining from all of these participants. So building from that rich foundation, an all-staff meeting was held in early February, followed by an iterative process with our strategic planning committee and all staff, and reflection on other state plans such as the Colorado Outdoors Strategy, which has resulted in what GPS will review with you today. We've also considered the conversations in the State Trust Lands Conservation and Recreation Work Group in constructing our plan. However, the work group has yet to issue final recommendations, and so any impressions are preliminary and subject to change. The State Land Board strategic planning effort comes at a really exciting time for our agency as we look to diversify revenue, advance stewardship, and ensure organizational excellence. And this formula will allow us to deliver outstanding benefits to our current and future beneficiaries. So we hope you are as excited as we are. And with that, President Frobe, I'd like to turn it over to you for your remarks.
Thanks, Director Rosmarino. And I'm going to save any pithy comments to maybe the end of the discussion, but I did want to share with everyone, but especially my fellow commissioners, that I did end up with being the one who had the privilege of participating in the in two strategic planning sessions and tried to uphold sort of what I might have thought to be a collective board perception of priorities and things to focus on in the plan. You'll judge for yourselves, but it was a wonderful opportunity for me to spend those 2 days in these very thoughtful discussions held by the leaders of the organization about both the challenges that we're facing and the opportunities we have ahead. So I, for one, feel good about the plan, and I hope you will too. And I second the compliments that Director Rosmarino had for our consultants. Honestly, I've been through several strategic planning exercises in my time, and I have to say that the GPS team, Brian and Aaron, are truly amazing, thoughtful, effective, and really had a big hand in getting us to where we are. So I'll conclude there and pass it back to you for introductions.
Thank you, Chair Frobe. Absolutely. Heartily praise the GPS team. They have just been critical on keeping us on task. They've informed us with helpful content, encouraged us to be really inclusive, which we think is paying off dividends. And so with that, I would love to introduce Brian Poole and Aaron Ulrich of Government Performance Solutions to walk you through what we've come up with. So Brian and Aaron, take it away.
Thank you, Director Rosamarino. Thank you, President Frobe, and everyone here today. We're delighted to have this opportunity to share what has been a really robust and engaging process over the last number of months. It's been an honor to serve this board and the staff and all of your stakeholders in really pulling together a variety of opinions and concerns around the future of the Colorado State Land Board. And there are so many areas here where we hope to share today the concepts and the thinking behind those concepts. And certainly there will be times when we know that there are differing opinions and different concerns that floated back and forth through the process. And ultimately we had to settle in some cases on things that may not be perfect for everybody that was involved in the process. And I just want to thank everyone for participating and sharing those and providing enough of a context to have a real debate in some cases about where do we invest over the next 5 years and where do we take some of the energy and really push forward on some critical concepts. So I would just pause there for a minute and allow my partner Erin to introduce herself and a couple of her thoughts as we get started.
Sure. Thank you, Brian, and thank you all for being here. We're really excited to share the results of this. I think, everybody's mentioned the amount of stakeholder input and the willingness and interest and desire from the State Land Board staff to hear from external partners and the public. So really excited to just kind of hear some of the thoughts and questions from the commissioners today and be able to share some of the depth of thinking that went into the development of this plan. So thank you all.
All right. Well, I will take the share at this point, if that works. And we should be seeing our opening slide ready to go. All right. So just a few thoughts here as we get going, and much has been said already. I don't want to repeat much, but certainly this was a unique time as we thought about engaging all of the stakeholders and started to plan out who might we want to meet with and hear from as we explore the future here in the strategy. And we realized, this is just a unique moment. There's a new director, new board members, lots of challenges and concerns across Colorado. From agricultural and oil and gas and recreation and the environment. And we needed to have a lot of folks participate here and share their thoughts as we move through the cycle in order to really have enough information to make some good judgment calls. And the slides that we'll share are the result of a lot of different deliberations and summations and distillation of concepts. And we're delighted to get started on sharing those. So just a very quick refresher on the project. We started back in October. It seems not that long ago, but there you go. Just building the plan and making arrangements, having our kickoff meetings and so on, and getting the engagement plan together. We had 3 really robust months of informing the strategy over, I think, almost 100 separate conversations, and individuals were able to participate in those. Some of them were one-on-one interviews, which gave us a sort of a confidential and private format to really dig into some of the challenging things that folks want to say, and offered some confidential feedback on either individual circumstances or broader statewide concerns that folks may have had. Then we had a number of focus groups with both internal stakeholders and internal staff, allowing us to interact really with almost everyone at the board and across staff, which was really exciting and offered a number of forums for people to participate and share, initial feedback around what some of the strengths of the board are, what some of the challenges that are facing the organization, opportunities that exist out there in the new world in the next 5 years, and some threats and risks facing the organization. So we were able to work through that in a number of settings, one-on-one, in person, and otherwise. So we're really delighted that we had those opportunities, and we're able to distill into those some of the key themes and insights and tensions as Director Rosmarino referenced earlier. So that was the food stock, if you will, for moving forward into synthesizing the actual framework. We took that on in January and have just really completed that over the last few weeks to give you this version of the document today. And ensuring that we go from concept into practical and implementable realities. And some of those areas have conflicts and tensions that we needed to resolve. We think we have those resolved for the most part now, but there are challenges that exist in the strategy itself that we'll need to carry forward and continue to working on those strategic tensions. And we've highlighted those, I think, to a great degree. There is some work around some small group implementation plan development and some additional work that needs to happen here just in late April and early May to actually get to a final product that will be presented, as Director Rosmarino stated, next month to the board for approval. And there's continuing work that will need to occur to develop, for example, the annual plan for the next fiscal year by staff, which will get you really into the details of who will do what when to begin execution on the plan. But that said, we have a larger concept of which of the key areas are most important and which ones need to be addressed in the short term. And there are many of those I will highlight in the short term that need to at least get started in some way in terms of analysis and building consensus and engagement. So there's a lot of work to do, and that's all implied in the strategy here as we work forward. And then of course, the communication strategy will work forward to make sure that as we finalize this, that the right people get the plan and hear about it from the right people, that the context and color behind that, behind the plan and its rationale go along with it so people can understand the why decisions were made. And we hope to be really clear around those today and provide some insights around that will really illuminate the rationale and the reasoning. Aaron, I'll just pause and give you a chance at anything that I've overlooked as we bring us up to date here.
No, I think that's an excellent summary. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Any
Brian,
questions?
would you like me to share my screen? I have the full view of the PDF, if that's helpful.
That would actually, thank you. I've just got
Happy to take over. Yep.
All right. So as has been mentioned, we had over 100 conversations. There's just an enormous amount of interest in this process. I think as for every invitation that we sent out, I think we almost got a response in each one. There may have been a few folks who we ultimately invited, but were unable to connect with. But that said, many others brought their friends and their friends and associates to meetings. So we were delighted to make sure to have just a robust conversation across the state, from local governments to industry to government partners and statewide and other partners in the education and oil and gas and so on. So really delighted for the amount of robust feedback that we got, and a number of key themes and insights resulted, as I mentioned. All right, so this is the strategy map. A lot of content here. The purpose of this page is actually to represent the vast majority of the content that we've been working through. This is in summary form and really flows from the top to the bottom to allow you to see how some of the larger concepts connect with each other, how those then feed into our three primary goal areas in green at the bottom there, and how those goal areas break down into some specific objectives, which in turn will have, for example, a number of projects or initiatives or efforts that will be chartered over time to realize the strategy. So as we start at the top, we'll just think about those things, those items in blue there. These are really the why statements that we think about in strategic plan development. Why do we exist? Why do we? What is our purpose here? And how do we work together to achieve these things? So let's start with the vision. We did update the vision, mission, and the foundational principles or values, as well as adding a tagline. So a lot of new material here. But let's start with the vision. As you can see, thriving and resilient state trust lands fund the needs of Colorado's current and future public school students. And you can see we've broken this down into the key areas of a vision being aspirational in its nature, looking forward far into the future even, and making sure that these are things that we hope to achieve and both aspire to achieve, but inspire others to join in our cause. So I'll pause and give you a moment to reflect on this, but certainly the key elements here are the thriving and resilient state trust lands are the source here of the funds that we are going to need for our both current and future public schools, and to serve those students with those. There are a number of trusts, of course, across the actual organization. We've focused on the public school students here to emphasize who we believe we aspire to serve, and the vast majority of resources would go to, and that really simplified our approach on the vision. To drill further into the next and mission statements can be a little tricky for folks to distinguish, if you will, from a vision statement. Again, while a vision statement is aspirational and future forward thinking, we focused the mission on those concrete things that we will do and do today, and do to serve those in a way that no others can. So we protect and enhance Colorado state trust lands with ingenuity and care to perpetually generate reasonable and consistent revenue for public schools and other beneficiaries. Of course, there's a long context here to the mission statement and the statute and the Constitution and other sources. So we are faithful to those, we believe. Commissioner Pribble, I see your hand.
Quick question. I'm curious, and I've got a question on the tagline too.
Sure.
This is the choice of the word ingenuity. No doubt was done with some thoughtfulness. Can you explain that? I mean, I presume it means creativity, innovation,
yes,
etc. But why?
Yeah, you're right, so why in the middle of that.
Yep. So why did you choose the word ingenuity?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think we went through a number of drafts of this version in the dialogue. Certainly feel that the innovation word had become a little tried or a little overused sometimes, and ingenuity reflected a thought of creativity and birth of new things to connect to that word. So I think it's working through the past versions or some of the other language that had been tried, but didn't really resonate with the team as well as ingenuity.
Yep, I don't disagree that the word innovation has become a bit cliched. I'm just curious, and then I'll hold my tongue. But when you get done with the tagline, I've got a question there as well.
Sure thing. Sure. We had not, for the record, we did not intend at the outset to necessarily develop a tagline. But as we started looking at these common themes, especially when we started pulling together the goals, as you see further down, we had talked about trying to be pithy and to the point with people, even just to get to the vision statement or the mission statement, which carry a lot of, weighty words. We try to make them as short and as to the point as possible, but it can be difficult to make a whole sentence with everything you want to say. And actually this tagline just sort of fell out of the work that we were doing in a way to sort of just punchline, okay, what do we really care about? What do we want to make sure people understand in the elevator speech, or maybe the one step speech if you're going upstairs. So really wanted to bring it down to its essence in the tagline, and we hope that comes across. Resilient lands, enduring revenue, and better schools for Colorado. If we get those things across to people, we know that they can read more into the mission, more into the vision, and understand a little bit more, but that's the essence.
All right, that prompts my next question. Better schools for Colorado. Most of us, I think, when you say the word school, it implies a structure, a building. But we're not just about funding buildings through the BEST program, although that was, a big piece. Did you consider the word education instead of schools? better education for Colorado or better public education? I mean, since we are obviously a Colorado institution, it's sort of stating the obvious to say for Colorado. I mean, it's not for Nebraska. Okay, so I'm just curious, the choice of the word schools rather than emphasizing what the real objective here is, which is quality education.
Yeah, I think we went back and forth on this. If I could, President Frobe, please. You're on mute. Still on mute. Yep.
Thank you. Sorry about the confusion here on my controls. Commissioner Pribble, this really did organically kind of surface in our conversations. I think it was on the second session. And I'm not going to speak for everyone else, but for me, schools imply the community, the curriculum, the property, all that it means to have effective schools educating kids. So I don't believe any of us took the limited view that this was always going to be about construction, but I invite my other team members to comment.
Well, and I'll just jump in. Having served also on a school board, we talked schools broadly, as Deb just defined, not just physical structure. We wanted better schools for our county and our community. And that include all of not just the capital behind the physical structure of the schools, but everything within that school. I think I like schools. I think it's a term people can resonate with, because it's everything associated with a school. So I get where you're coming from, Jim, but I think for communities, their school is all of the above. They want a great school and everything in that school as related to what that means for them.
Sorry about that. And I'm not going to follow my sword over wordsmithing, something that's been so thoughtfully and debated. But I would just point out that for some people, for some of us, just as I reacted to it, again, when you say the word school, to me, that's the building. It's the quality of education, the curriculum, the quality of teaching, the social experience, the community involvement that creates a great education, not just a building. But that's just me.
I agree.
So if I might, just in terms of schools, and I hear you, Commissioner Pribble. So our charter is support for the common schools, and then consider that our biggest beneficiary by far is the school trust. And I think school it connotes K through 12 education, whereas education can be much broader than that. It could be institutional, it can be non-institutional, it can be for school kids, it can be for adults. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you raising the issue. I think there's a lot of additional reasons why you might consider schools.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not going to make an argument about this. I just tell you that some people are going to have a similar interpretation. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Pribble and Heath. Okay, so moving forward, just here a little bit, we talked a lot about the values and potential foundational principles, operating principles, other concepts that often strategic plans use to capture how we will work together. What are the behaviors that we accept and expect for our teams and for our operations to achieve the very mission we just outlined. And at one point we went through a dialogue, which has been pretty common in my experience, having completed, dozens of strategic plans, and that is, how do we want to use the idea of the values or a foundational principle? What is the purpose of that in a practical sense day to day? And I highlighted that there are two sort of schools of thought around this that I've seen over the years. One is that you include values or something to that effect here in your strategy because people have done so over the years, right? And you feel obligated to put some words on paper around transparency and leadership and things like that articulate lofty ways to operate together and fill a void on the document. And I've seen that many times over the years, and that can work, right? That you have these principles or values that are there. But in many organizations, that's sort of only where they are, right? They move on and they reference, as in the future, if they do reference their strategy, which of course we hope they do. If they do reference those, it's very at an oblique angle or tangential, periodic reference to those values. And we had a good debate in the workshops here around, is that something we want to do there, or do we really want to articulate words that have deep actual meaning to the team and can actually connect to the day-to-day work? And do we expect people to reference these in their day-to-day lives and the day-to-day meetings that they have, and hold each other accountable to being to serving those thoughts pretty well? And if somebody misses out on those, are they going to be willing to call somebody out and highlight that doesn't actually meet our values or our foundational principle? And the team went through that dialogue, and we really rested finally on what you see here of not just a foundational principle, but a definition behind that. And I'll provide that on the next page in more detail. But the concept here was that we did want to have one that is active and useful and actually communicates meaning and would be durable. And so it took a little bit to go back and forth around some of the design of this and the words we chose, but we end up with, we thoughtfully steward trust assets for our beneficiaries. And this is, again, a succinct or more succinct version of some of the elements here in the vision and the mission, but is really focused on this word of steward. And you'll see there's an acronym there in capitals at the end, STEWARD. And I'll just go to the next page that has that reference so we can dive into that. You find that one, Aaron? Perfect. So as we think about trying to identify and capture the concepts that we believe need to be embedded in the foundational principle, we have the statement of, we thoughtfully steward trust assets for our beneficiaries. But actually, if you look into the word steward, we are able to come through and develop a simple mnemonic that allows folks to really refresh on this and recall this in a way that's useful. So we think about the S as start with our beneficiaries, consistent with the mandate and the Constitution. We lead with that. And then we work to team with partners around the state and in local areas to achieve that mission. We think about engaging the staff and all the work that we do, welcoming that evolution and that ingenuity, if you like, as a reference from earlier, and then achieving a true impact in the financial world and keeping our revenue and our ability to fund our beneficiaries in a real way. Respecting the land is a huge concept that we work through in every element of the work that we've done together, and trying to find new ways to connect people to the role that the land board has in stewardship as a broad concept. But that term stewardship has felt, I think, a lack of punch, if I can say, or at least people perceive that punch differently over the last few years. And it's been able to be defined separately from us. So the idea of connecting this word steward and providing context within it was really just resonated with the team and their ability to communicate a foundational principle, to put this next level of detail into the word, and that this is what we mean by steward, which includes respecting the land and then delivering the revenue. So you can see as we work down the line, we're trying to think of all of those touch points that we want people to think about when they think about why the land board operates the way it does, and who we serve. So I'll pause here on on Stuart. Okay. Well, let's go back. Oh, sorry. Thanks. Perfect. Right there. Well, actually, can we go back to see all three in context, the three goals, and then we'll come in and dive into one. So as we think about the one more back, there you go. Perfect. So just wanted to juxtapose the blue at the top, vision, mission, and foundational principles with a new tagline, and those being those high level order concepts of why we are here, what is our purpose, and making sure people understand that at the global level, if you like. And then we have these three green areas here, which are the three primary goals. These are the plain language focus areas that we'll dive and spend much of our time on today, I'm sure, that we'll dive into. But let's just look across them for a moment to get the context before we work into one or the other. And I'll start on the left with enduring revenue. This is the #1 goal, to distribute dependable and growing cash flows for our current and future beneficiaries. You can see how that language maps up to the foundational principle in terms of the reference to beneficiaries. You can see how that moves up to to our mission in terms of thinking about our revenue for public schools and other beneficiaries, and you can see how it moves up in other areas above. And so the idea here is to isolate that revenue component here on the left side and dig into this with some very specific areas and some very specific objectives to tackle for the next 5 years. And we'll go through those here in detail in a minute. But I want to just compare that left column, enduring revenue, to the second one here, goal #2, which is the resilient land. And we spent a lot of time in the group thinking about how do we communicate the role that many have interpreted for the land board to behave. And some have said, well, it's public land, and we should be able to use that in this way or that way. And I think it's been lost sometimes in the conversations that have been had and some of the dialogue back and forth around the state, that the land is part of this permanent or sustainable future. And there was a lot of dialogue about how do we communicate that the land has to be able to be able to perform in long-term sort of epic level of performance. And this concept came back to resiliency, and that the land, and specifically here, to advance the land health, to ensure the long-term economic productivity of Colorado's state trust lands. And this is really important to the team, to everything that's been discussed from staff level, and we heard it from many of the external stakeholders, that this team has a role to make sure that the land health does not suffer in the short term in pursuit of some other goals, because that would then detract from our ability to serve future beneficiaries. And this connection of time, if you will, of investment and thoughtful stewarding the land came back to how do we communicate that in a very direct and purposeful way that we can communicate. And we settled on this concept of resilient land, that we are here to help the land health, advance that land health to ensure its ability to produce revenue, for example, well into the future. Okay. And then our third concept here, which again, we'll go into more detail in a minute, but just want to reference each of these in, at the global level again, connected people. And so you can see the revenue, enduring revenue, the resilient land, and we thought about how do we communicate, the role that staff and our partners can play in actually achieving this vision and this mission. And as we work through a number of varieties and formations of this concept, we landed with this idea of connected people, and that our long-term organizational excellence is actually from empowering staff and that staff building diverse networks across the state. We heard from so many of their interviews with your stakeholders and your lessees and others that the team is respected for its knowledge, for the way they can operate across the state, how they can help bring various experts to bear on various problems, how they can quickly escalate things and try to identify new lines of business or new ways to operate. And this concept came back to the ability for the team to build that network behind the scenes of expertise and knowledge and bring that to bear. So that's the large sort of top level continuity here between the and you really pick it up in the three goals of enduring revenue, resilient land, and connected people. So let's dive into enduring revenue and get into some specifics here. So as mentioned at the top, right, we distribute dependable and growing cash flows for current and future beneficiaries. And we have these 5 main strategic objectives, 1 through 5. And there is some thought in the order, but it's not necessarily a prioritization here. I don't want people to think that 1 is always more than 5 or better than 5. But there is some level of focus on the language here. And first and foremost, and carry over from the prior strategic plan, of course, is the optimizing the performance of our assets, right? So thinking about how to strategically manage the land, the mineral, the financial, and other assets to ensure the long-term value for our beneficiaries. So again, you see this connection between the assets themselves, now actually naming them between the land, the mineral, the financial, and others, and making sure that that long-term value comes out over time, not just the short-term. Then we think about number 2, diversify revenue streams across the trust. There's a lot of conversations here to how do we represent the concerns and risks that were highlighted over and over again in our conversations around being too focused on certain revenue streams, and our challenge of thinking about how over time do we communicate the need to diversify, and so that comes out here in the strategic plan straight up. And then thinking about, we're going to expand and balance the existing revenue sources to strengthen our financial resilience over time. There's a lot of thinking here in terms of if you can expand and add to the revenue sources that we have, you begin to start to get a little more balance over time to the set of revenue streams. This is not a switch out, rather, but an expansion of the additional areas that can do that. And this diversification itself is going to provide more resilience for the trust over time. And we know that there are certain assets that are extracted, and we cannot there's no recurring revenue in that type of a model. So there's concern here to make sure that we have other vehicles that are growing, but for now and long into the future, to create that balance that is needed. Third up is aligning our asset management strategies to ensure increasing cash flows. So for the revenues that we do have and become assets and are being managed over time, we want to make sure that those assets themselves are producing at the highest possible rate for the trust. And here we're talking about implementing an asset allocation model that will actually guide our decisions about acquiring, developing, conserving, or disposing of assets. And this fits with the carryover from the previous plan, has been mentioned at the top, but certainly allows us to make that connection between a decision, for example, to acquire or develop a certain piece of land, conserve it, or dispose of other assets. This model overall is going to ensure the strategic plan will ensure that we actually increase the cash flows as a result of that strategy. Then number 4, separate but powerful as well, support strategies that would actually increase the long-term earning power of the trust. So not just, what is the mix of allocations in number 3, but that those assets themselves are actually earning more over time. And this is a really important point here, but to grow and protect the whole trust, including the permanent fund. and a lot of conversations here about how that will move forward. And there are strategies and conversations, obviously, that have to take place. But that we would pursue that we would grow and try to protect the whole trust, including the permanent fund, is now in the draft strategy, as you can see, and a critical element that we would like to advance. And then 5, expanding partnerships and markets that enhance trust revenue. We heard, and I want to thank all the stakeholders who were so candid and frank about this in our interviews, particularly, that there have been times where you wanted to have other deeper conversations with the land board, and you wanted to think about new opportunities and trust assets. And it just didn't feel like there was a place and a time and a person who was ready to have those conversations for you. We heard that, and I think everyone at staff and at leadership level really wants to live up to that concept here. And so we've included this particular goal here in the strategic objective under revenue, is that there are, we think, public and private partners who can actually help realize new opportunities across the assets. And those can then help create new revenue streams. A number of areas, whether that's in biodiversity or water management or renewable resources or others, where we just haven't had the conversations, or we don't have a structure to have continuing and sharpening conversations around where are those opportunities, what are the places that have additional potential if we were able to bring in a partner either from other agencies or the private sector. And so this goal is designed to really put together the structure and the vehicles for those conversations to happen. We're excited to share that with you. All right, I will pause here. I've talked a lot, so let's get some feedback around goal number 1, enduring revenue. What do you think about how these are individually constructed and how they would work together? Do you feel the importance here, and what are your thoughts? Yes, please.
Commissioner Harvey, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sort of curious about obviously petroleum revenue. I think, crude oil is about $100 a barrel right now, something in that nature. And I think in Colorado, if it gets down to 55, $60 a barrel, it's no longer economical to drill. If it gets down to $40 a barrel, I don't think it's even economical to produce on existing wells. And if you look at how fast solar is coming into play, I think for the first time ever, new solar beat out all other new energy development worldwide and, annually. So I wonder if we need to war room a bit what happens with various scenarios with crude oil. If it comes down as fast as some analysts expect it to, EV cars are growing so fast. And I also wonder if we have any, I love this new revenue streams that Mindy's been working on and our renewable people. But I wonder if we really have a sense of it, if it will replace our petroleum quick enough. And if it doesn't, if we shouldn't be building up the permanent fund, I can't remember what's it at, 1.6 billion in cash or somewhere in there, to be realistic about keeping the revenue going. So I guess I'm just not convinced that we're going to be able to, replace that revenue stream if crude comes down as fast as a lot of analysts think it will.
Thank you, Commissioner Harvey. Commissioner Heath?
I share that concern. I didn't have my hand up. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to speak.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, I share the concern too.
Thank you.
And I guess just following
So,
up on
Mark,
that-
do you have thoughts about language that might address that?
I think part of our strategic plan should be, what do they call it in in the industries, greenfielding or war rooming or really doing some scenarios where if we're looking at a 25-year plan, or even even if we're looking out 15 years or 10 years, where we say, what happens if oil prices change radically? What happens if all the work we're doing, what's the rate at which we're replacing our revenue streams with these biodiversity efforts, with our wind, with our leasing wind, leasing solar, all that stuff? And are they really on a reasonable trajectory, or are we fooling ourselves about how quickly we can replace the revenue streams? And if it seems unrealistic, I just wonder if we need to tell the state that we need to build up our permanent fund so we have something to live off just financially.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If I could take a
Please.
stab at that,
Please.
I think I 100% concur with the concern here. And on the face of it, with all due respect to environmental markets and Mindy's incredible efforts, it's not a apples and oranges comparison on how to match up revenues. So what this plan does, and I'd point you to really number 4, 3, and 4. So this plan needs to be flexible enough that we can actually undertake specific actions and set specific goals that all will happen under these strategic objectives. And so while it isn't stated quite as straightforwardly, Commissioner Harvey, as you're suggesting, I submit that within number 4, supporting the strategies that increase the long-term earning power of the trust, a piece of that is the designation of mineral revenues as that asset depletion rather than ongoing revenue. So that's sort of housed under there. It's also housed under number 3, where in the asset allocation process, we will be running those scenarios about revenue and about what happens if we take all the mineral revenues, for example, and are successful in getting those put back into the permanent fund. One of the reasons these are more general is we do have, other parts of government, namely the legislature, who has some ability to allocate funds, as we've seen. So what we can do here is to state our goals and our objectives, and then set up a series of projects underneath where we specifically, in the span of a year or two, address these very specific actions that will help us grow the permanent fund. That's really the only way we're going to be able to keep pace and to compensate in the future for a lack of mineral revenues. But we need to run some scenarios, which is what happens under number 3.
Okay, so I guess my question was just, or my hope is that staff, the bright minds on our staff are running those scenarios and making those considerations.
Not yet. I mean, at a high level, yes, but
Yeah.
what we need is that model that captures
Right.
the assets, the attributes, and the revenue streams that we can twist and turn and see what things look like under those different scenarios.
Yeah. Thank you.
Excuse me. This is
Please.
Commissioner Yee?
do
Go ahead, Commissioner Keith.
do you think it's worth on one of these actually inserting the words recognizing the depletion of assets so that we can help everyone recognize that we see what's coming and that there's an awareness of this that is driving this new strategy?
Do you have a suggestion on how you might frame that? Would it be under number 4, for example?
Well, I under asset management strategies, it might also be there. Just my interest is recognizing and putting into the words here a recognition that there's been a depletion of assets, obviously with oil and gas, whether we say it that way or not. But, I think if someone were just looking at this, you wouldn't know why many of these are necessary. And it feels like putting something like that in would be useful.
Thank you. Commissioner Pribble?
Yeah, so I don't have any instant words to help achieve what our colleagues Mark and Josie are promoting here, but I just want to weigh in and say that they're both spot on. We have obviously a depleting asset about which we know very little. Apparently, I say apparently because I don't know if what we know about any estimate of our reserves. That's apparently only known to the leasee, who estimates what might be in any given oil field or fossil fuel field. So it may be impossible to estimate, are we running out of this asset in 10 years or 100 years? But all that said, it is a depleted or depleting asset. And then secondly, the element that Mark first raised about replacement or competition by renewable sources and the potential for this market to crater. So I just want to lend my voice of support for what Mark and Josie are promoting.
Thank you. Other feedback here on the concepts around enduring revenue. We've had some good start to this. What else do you see here? Or not see that should be here? Okay. Well, very good suggestions, and we're taking those to heart. I know, and we'll find a way to frame that up. Let's move to number 2. If it works, we can we'll visit 2 and 3, and then allow ourselves to come back to the big picture again and see if after diving into each of these a little more detail, there are any gaps or additional comments. So don't feel like we can't circle back in a minute. All right, goal number 2. As I mentioned at the top, we've had a number of conversations on how do we represent in very direct language the concerns that so many have around this long-term economic productivity of the land. And that can come in a number of different forms and different shapes, depending on what we're trying to do with that particular property. But ultimately, this concept of we need to advance the land health to ensure that the long-term economic productivity of those lands themselves. And so this concern around health and the long-term really focused our mind to think about these 5 objectives. And again, not in a particular order, but certainly all worthy of our attention here. So investing in ecosystem health, biodiversity, and climate resilience. So the concern here is making sure that the land management approaches that people are using actually protect and enhance the land value. And that may be happening in various ways, but certainly could be restoring the ecosystems, enhancing biodiversity, and increasing that resilience to climate change and extreme weather events. And as we've seen with long-term aridification and other challenges facing the state, this is a challenge, and trying to find ways through the strategy to invest in those concepts and to maybe offset or mitigate some of those concerns helps us to actually build more resilient lands over time. Second, we have this idea of strengthening the management itself across trust lands And here we heard a number of, this was one of the strategic tensions that we had talked about earlier, that there were sometimes, depending on your position and your thought process here, that there were different opinions around what are sustainable land management practices. And so our goal here is to actually provide clarity over time in terms of what are the expectations and what is the accountability for people around sustainable land management practices that would actually protect the natural values and generate and preserve that long-term productivity that we mentioned at the top. And so there are times and places when people may self-define what had been called stewardship or protection of the lands or other terms. We want in this strategic objective to emphasize what are the specific expectations we have of lessees, for example, and how would we hold them accountable over time that their land management practices are in fact sustainable and that they don't diminish the long-term productivity of those lands. That's really important for the strategy to succeed. It addresses some of the strategic challenges and tensions that we mentioned at the top, that where there are differing visions and differing versions, different definitions, different semantics, if you like, on what stewardship means. It feels sometimes like it's in the eye of the beholder, if I can just say that myself, having a number of interviews and gone back and forth on this. And so as we diagnose that challenge, if people are defining that in their own ways, it's incumbent on the state land board in its strategy to actually commit to defining those expectations and the accountability around those expectations. And so that's what this is communicating. All right, third up, we talked a lot about incentives and partnerships to help promote sustainable land management. So thinking here about, what are the things that we can do either through partnership and incentives to work with lessees, agencies, and partners and to actually advance the land use practices and leverage the resources out there that do improve land health and value with the science and the practice and the experience included. So there is a number of things that we think this area, this particular objective can tackle to make sure that people have the information and the resources, practices at hand and have the resources to teach that or communicate that to them to ensure that we actually improving the land as over time. Number 4, we talked about expanding the use of data, science, innovation, and experience to guide these very decisions. So there is a lot of emerging research, for example, nationally or otherwise. There are some monitoring methods, new technologies that are coming out that may help us with this, and a broad array of diverse knowledge and practices over time that we can help, that we need in this strategic plan. We're saying we need to help actually improve the practices and inform our long-term planning. So for those that might have the science or the data or that experience on the land, we want to leverage that and gather that and share that in a way that improves our ability to actually manage the land in a sustainable way. And number 5, we've talked here about demonstrating improvements in land health and productivity. So the challenge has been, in some cases, we don't know how to prove this, how to demonstrate that we're actually improving the land health and its productivity. So here we're saying we will monitor and quantify progress toward land management goals that to ensure those healthy ecosystems protect and enhance the value of the trust. And then we'll adapt our management in response to that tracking. So as we learn what is working, we learn what is actually improving the land health through various methods, including the science and data and others above, that we're actually documenting that and then responding in our practices where that information tells us we're not doing the right thing. Okay, so 5 big objectives here under resilient land, all about advancing the health of the land to ensure the long-term economic productivity here. I'll pause and look for your feedback. What do you think? Commissioner Harvey?
I think these are great goals. And again, the question is, how do we monitor? How do we evaluate it? How, it's a lot of land, 3 million acres spread out all across the state. And in terms of partnerships, I keep referring to, we have these excellent schools, CSU, Colorado School of
Mhm.
Mines. We have NRail. We have, is it MCAD, the one that Trump's trying to shut down? We have some of the very best scientists in the country with these various organizations. And I just hope we continue to partner with them because they can help us to, figure out what resilience really means and whether it's really happening across all our lands. And I don't know if we have annual reports like state of the land, annually or biannually or something. If we don't, it might be a good exercise. And I acknowledge it's hard to figure out whether all 3 million acres are becoming more resilient.
Right.
Maybe we can break it down into sections or something. Anyway, I think these are great goals. And again, the question is, how do we do it well?
Yeah, I would emphasize we had a number of offers and for partnership around these in the interviews and in the engagement process. I think early, not least of which was CSU and some of the others that you mentioned specifically. I do think they would be willing to work and help on each of these areas, particularly the data and the science. We talked about some of the references in here when you read through them. We didn't want to highlight any particular institution or organization here, but that's certainly implied. And in the next level of engagement, those are some of the obvious choices that we've already discussed. So, thank you. Commissioner Heath.
Yes, this particular section is one where I've given it quite a bit of thought, and I think these are fine goals, but I think they're incomplete. And let me say that, whenever I've done strategic planning, I usually try to go back to a source document. And in this case, we have this wonderful constitutional mandate. And so I went back and looked at that. And the part of it that really struck me is, and I'm going to read it verbatim, that the economic productivity of all lands held in public trust is dependent on sound stewardship, including protecting and enhancing the beauty, natural values, open space, and wildlife habitat thereof for this and future generations. And I feel like that this speaks to things that might be soil health or all things that are important, but I don't think it embraces that part of the constitutional mandate that really is around what I'm calling stewardship. And I heard you say earlier that you thought it had kind of lack of punch as a word. I'll push back and say I think we have a stewardship trust. We have done many of our new hires in the whole area of stewardship. And so I feel like the fact that the Constitution uses the word sound stewardship should give us some insight on how we include these pieces when we talk about the land. And I would go back, for example, and talk about under resilient land in the very beginning rather than advanced land health. I think that makes it sound just like soil health, which is important, but it's so much more. I think we're talking about stewarding the land to ensure, and maybe using some of the language right out of the constitutional mandate. I feel like there's no reason why when we talk about revenue incentives that it might also be here, and not just in geothermal or renewable energy, but the fact that we see a lot of tourism related to the aspects of what they talk about as natural values, wildlife habitat, et cetera. And, when we want to think about protection of critical wildlife habitat or even beaver introduction, et cetera, we don't look at what I think are the traditional stewardship concepts. And so I would like to find a way to add more of that to this particular section.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
it comes out of that part of the Constitution that starts with state school lands or an endowment held in a perpetual intergenerational public trust. And I still like that language because that idea of a perpetual intergenerational public trust is what many of us have used as we've spoken with legislators about why in this challenging budget time, raiding this trust, as they've done again this year, is really contrary to our fiduciary responsibilities. So
Mhm.
I would like to use the things you have, but I would really encourage us to expand those concepts as it relates to our founding document with constitutional mandates.
Yeah, great points. Thank you so much, Commissioner Heath. President Frobe. Want to come off mute?
Yeah, I'm going to let Commissioner Scanlon go next.
Thank you.
I feel very special.
I hope so.
Going in front of our chair. I am wondering if we shouldn't, with the objective one, I feel so strongly about climate resilience. To me, everything follows that. If we don't invest in and invest in climate resilience to some degree, that's what will protect ecosystem health and protect biodiversity. I just feel there might be a reordering of priorities, and that priority is a statement. And I think that's a big change from previous strategic plans. And, we obviously saw that just in our viewing of the Lesser Prairie Chicken, but it's across all our lands. It's the worsening drought conditions that we're seeing, everything. And these extreme weather events are going to, I'm afraid, potentially become the norm. So I'm just putting it out there that there might be something about resiliency is going to rely on our ability to adapt and invest in those things that will be impacted by climate and climate change. So I'm not exactly sure how to word that, but I'm wondering about reordering that a little bit or somehow reflecting that priority.
Thank you.
And thank you, Commissioner Scanlon. On this first one, my original thought was this to me is one of the biggest changes in flavor, if not wording, but it's the top line is to actually invest. That's a very active word. It's a word we haven't had in the prior strategic plan. It's a more active investment culture for the land board in the lands it has. I think Commissioner Heath has a good idea where perhaps, instead of land health, we're really talking about the natural resource values or the natural resources of these lands, which is more than just health. I'll leave that to others, but I really wanted to draw attention to the active word investing in these approaches. These are the categories, and we can certainly change them, but if we invest in ecosystem health, that hopefully is a good defense against climate resilience, but there may be other things we want to state in here. So I think it's good to maybe take another look at that. And I don't know if investing in climate resilience to me is really broad. It's really the set of actions that enable your lands to survive, persist, and thrive in a changing climate. So I don't know, I'll leave it at that.
Well, and I'm just piggybacking off of that. And it's also protecting biodiversity in the face of climate changes. And it might be that we have to divide some of this out a little bit. We may be trying to lump too much into that first objective. I'm just, food for thought. But it's a loaded objective, and there's a lot embedded in there. And I think it's really important we state very clearly our concerns.
Yeah, and maybe
Thank
up in the tagline under resilient land, it seems to me that perhaps an orientation towards climate resilience in that statement, not just, I mean, long-term economic productivity rests upon our ability to ensure that the lands are resilient in climate. So maybe there can be some work done on that as well.
Thank you. Others? What do you think?
Um, you know,
I, oh,
I
Commissioner
agree
Heath?
with all that, but I'm going to make the argument again. I think all of that is around stewardship. And frankly, maybe it's just stating that we recognize the challenge of climate change and therefore we'll, emphasize certain investments. But I certainly agree with all that, but I want to come back and I'm going to make the case to use the word stewardship in perhaps in substitution of advance.
Mhm.
Or I think stewarding the land to ensure the long-term economic productivity could be a substitute. I don't
Yeah.
want to get into wordsmithing, but I think stewardship, particularly because they directly out of the Constitution, they talk about sound stewardship, so necessary to the economic productivity of the lands held in public trust.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll just respond. I mean, we did come back to the term stewardship, obviously, because of what you saw in our guiding principle, right? So that came a little bit later as we worked through it. So there may be a way to tie that back in and not lose that thread. So um, share that. Commissioner Harvey?
and I wonder if this second goal should guide our purchases too, as in it, any land we purchase in the future, let's buy land that does have that resilience. Land that has some water, land that, just isn't going to dry up in the next 20, 30 years. We again, we have that forever planning horizon that most businesses don't have. And maybe this should guide some of the stuff that Matt does. Be looking for the most resilient lands.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we talked in one, we talked about the selection and maybe we can go back, Aaron, to one. There was some language here around the assets. Yeah, acquiring, developing, conserving, disposing, right? That language is there. The previous comment was perhaps include depleting, in that mix. But it might be a reference here of in the resilient lands section, if we can go back to that number 2, you're saying include some reference to that asset management strategy or allocation that is reflective of the investments in, say, number 1. And maybe there's a way to tie those investments into specific parcels or something. That I'm reading you right.
Yeah, since we're trying to make our assets as valuable as they possibly can be, we may as well take advantage of the long planning horizon we have and really select lands that in the future are going to be resilient.
Yeah. Thank you.
And just to that point, Mark, the resilient lands are really critical to resilient wildlife in that if we were to purchase a key link in a critical wildlife habitat path, I think as we think about acquisitions, thinking about all of that as well.
Yeah, great point. Director Rosmarino, did I lose you?
I lowered my hand when I saw the chairs up.
Oh,
You shouldn't do that, but
That's
I'll just briefly say again to touch on the acquisition side, it's really good laying out all this on how we manage the lands that we already have for the purposes we've been discussing.
Mhm.
And on that goal 3 of the revenue side, the asset allocation process will, in fact, Commissioner Harvey, with everyone's input too, be coming up with the kind of criteria of if,
Mhm.
here's how
Mhm.
the asset or here's how the asset portfolio should look, and here are the attributes of the things that should come and the attributes of the things that should go.
Mhm.
So it's going to be a fulsome process.
Yeah.
Yeah, great point. Thank you. Director?
Yes, thank you. So, um, on Commissioner Heath, your point on stewardship, we did have quite a conversation on whether to use stewardship, and I completely appreciate your point of mirroring the language in the Constitution and statute. One reflection is that the definition of stewardship in the dictionary is rather static, and it doesn't fully encompass the uplift that we're doing through, for example, our ecosystem services projects. And so I'm wondering if instead of substituting advance, it could be something like steward and advance land health, so that we get to your feedback of wanting to see steward or stewardship in goal number 2, but also provide some sort of modifier or amplification that our definition of stewardship is not a static one.
Well, I guess I didn't include the word land health because I think that looks like we're just talking about soil health, which is sort of the new trend in talking about ecosystems. I'm seeing it much more broadly. And if that's what stewardship meant when Amendment 16 and the constitutional language was developed, I think it's not anyone's intent to move away from that. And I just feel like advanced land health is limiting. So I know we're not trying to do too much wordsmithing, but I feel like the term stewardship, because we have a stewardship trust, we have people we've hired in the whole stewardship initiative, and it's far more than geothermal and all that.
Yes, I agree with you, Commissioner Heath. And so we'll take that back. And I hear you that you want to hear the word steward. You want to hear reference to beauty, open space, wildlife, and natural values that's in the Constitution. And we'll take another shot at this. One of my intention was also to ask about providing some more amplification of steward, of the verb steward, to really connote that we're trying to uplift the values, not
Yeah.
simply manage the status
Well,
quo.
if we even use those 2 sentences directly out of the Constitution that say that the economic productivity of all lands held in public trust is dependent on sound stewardship, including protecting and enhancing the beauty, natural values, open space, and wildlife habitat for this and future generations, by making some adaptation of that, I think says it. And it goes back to the whole question about the economics of a land.
Yeah.
So
And-
I don't think we can wordsmith here, but those
Yeah.
are the concepts I really hope we will pursue.
Yeah, and that protect and enhance really, I think would also accomplish what I was getting at. So thank you. We will rework and bring
Thank
back.
you.
I heard that too. Commissioner Pribble?
Thank you. So I guess this is wordsmithing, or maybe just asking for an explanation. By the way, I do appreciate the thoughtfulness that Josie and Mark have led in this discussion here. Back to under the objectives, number 1, advanced land management approaches. Again, I don't know, strategies, tactics. I don't know. I'm not sure what an approach is. If it's Um, so that's just confusing to me. What is an approach?
I think it's a corollary to a strategy, right? A plan,
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
I assume that's what you mean to convey. I'm just saying it may not be, it sounds a little bit bureaucratic or trying to be cute rather than direct.
Yeah.
So
I
that's just
hear
offer
advanced
that.
land management strategies would be direct.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think, I mean, people understand a strategy.
Yeah.
When you use approach as a noun, you think of landing an airplane or, um, walking in a door or something like that. And then the other one that was confusing to me is um, number 5, the last sentence. Adapt management in response to this tracking. What does that mean?
Yeah, we were talking about monitoring and quantifying the progress towards land management goals so that, we are actually measuring things. This is important. And as we learn things, the concept here is that we would respond to those lessons. So we would
Right.
adapt the actual management
Eh,
strategies, I guess, to use your word, in response to what we learned. And I think that we wanted to show that we weren't just going to measure for measurement's sake, that we were
Right.
measuring to learn
I
and,
just
and adapt.
make it just a slightly more simple declarative sentence. It is all I would suggest, so that there's not any confusion about it. That's all I
Yeah,
have.
we could say monitor and adapt land
Yeah.
management goals, that kind of
Right.
thing to prove the point.
Right. There's
I
there's
follow.
obviously a concept in land management called a quote unquote adaptive management, which
Right.
is, what that is. It's just, okay, if something isn't working today, try something different tomorrow. That's what adaptive management is.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's all I have.
Yeah, good feedback. Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy this level of discourse. Appreciate you being thoughtful on, what you're seeing and what is missing, and then giving us a little bit of room to correct as over the coming weeks and come back to you. That's really what we're hoping for here. Any other thoughts on resilient land? We've had a good go round here. I really like this, but I don't want to rush us off to the next one. If there's something else. Okay, let's move on to connected people. So we had a good conversation, as I mentioned at the top, around how do we articulate this? That the power and the value of the land board itself comes down to staff and the networks and connections to others, right? To big diverse networks that can handle all the different types of situations and knowledge and challenges across the system. So we came down to connected people, and the sort of the tagline here is ensure long-term organizational excellence by empowering staff and building diverse networks. So it's not just us; it's everyone we work with, all the partners in the field, and our lessees and others who are contributing and can contribute, perhaps more, to meeting our strategic objectives. And we outline the 5 here that are we feel most important. Number 1, invest in the people, systems, and tools needed to manage trust assets effectively. So this is really looking internal, thinking about strengthening staffing, technology, and our capacity needed to sustainably manage trust assets and support emerging lines of business. So there's a number of areas that in our interviews and in our stakeholder sessions and so on, we heard we would do more of that with you, or we could do more of that with you if you, meaning the land board, had more resources that knew that business, right, and could help us, adapt the land and do those kinds of revenue producing efforts, for example. And so the concept here is to actually make those investments in the team, in the staffing themselves, thinking about who would we need to hire and train and develop. What are those technologies that need some additional love and attention? Atlas has been mentioned as a potential one, but there are others around mapping that we heard that people could benefit from in terms of having more real-time and more interoperable technologies, and operational capacity in terms of, what are we able to do with the resources we have, and where do we deploy those in certain areas to actually sustainably manage those assets. And so that may require some additional investments and so on to make the lines of business actually work. And the second big one here was foster a culture of collaboration, innovation, and continuous improvement. This is a carryover in some ways to what we had before. The talk about lean process improvement, the talk around exploring new lines of business and being innovative, and ingenuity and other concepts that came up at the top of the line. And here we're thinking about how do we actually empower staff to do that, to contribute ideas, solve problems, and adapt to new challenges, and sharing the rationale for those decisions and directions. One thing that we did hear happen sometimes, that staff had some feedback around this, both in our focus groups and in some of the follow-up, is that there are times when decisions are made either at the board or leadership level where it's not always clear, really why this is happening, and why that direction has been taken. So our focus here and our intent here is to ensure that as we bring staff forward and we're making some of those investments in number one, and we're trying to build that culture of collaboration and continuous improvement, that part of that is actually giving people the chance to solve those problems. And if that recommendations are not met, or if they are even, really articulating that more clearly. So that's an ask, and we're trying to reflect that here in number two. Number three, we're highlighting here the need to build trust, alignment, and coordination across, and I think we could say all our networks, but certainly our networks. We start to list them here: build productive relationships and increase engagement with beneficiaries, policymakers, customers, agencies, communities, the private sector, and non-governmental partners. At one point, we did not list all of these, and it became too vague to have, I think, a punch. And then we came back and started naming some, and we felt like we need to name them all. And one of the highlights, I think, of your business and your work is that you are not accountable to just one or two organizations. You do not have stakeholders, in very, a simple monolithic set of stakeholders. In fact, quite the opposite. Many of your stakeholders have competing interests and differing views on what we should be doing with state trust lands and so on. So we thought this would be the moment to think about how do we articulate the challenge that having so many in your network creates, and the opportunity. Because actually, when we did a number of the interviews, if there was one recurring theme, it was sort of like, well, we would love to have an opportunity to meet with you all and share both their interests and their concerns from wherever they were coming from. Maybe it's another state agency, or a local government, or a certain line of business or an industry, and they would want to hear what your concerns are and areas where they may be able to help. And so when we talk here about building trust, alignment, and coordination, what we're really saying is set up recurring forums and opportunities to meet with and discuss the strategic plan with all of those that see an interest in the public lands that we steward here. So trying to outline that, and we list the full set of those that you engage with. Commissioner Pribble.
Yeah, quick question. What's the worst thing anybody said about the agency? Or what are the critics, if there are any out there? Maybe they all love the agency, but I
appreciate the question.
I tend to doubt. I'd like to know what's the worst, what's across the generalizations.
Yeah, I think it's a spectrum. I don't know if I could highlight the worst, but I think the concerns are, sometimes there's a sense of neglect, right? That you do things that don't benefit them, right? So wherever they sit or where they stand, their opinion, is reflective of, well, it didn't serve their particular interests, right? So there are some who feel that you haven't done enough, I think, to advance their interest or their strategy, and they see in public lands an opportunity for you to do so. And so there's some disappointment, across the board in various areas that that in some cases compete with each other, right? I mean, leave the land alone and do more with the land, sell the land. You can't do all three. And so I think the challenge of a board like yours is to evaluate those opportunities, and we are articulating that, I think, in particularly in goal number one, to evaluate those decisions of how to acquire, dispose, or deplete resources, and so on. So I think you're actually tuned into a lot of that challenge out there in terms of the competing calls for you to pursue one strategy or the other. I actually would say that, I mean, really not 100%, but the vast majority were really impressed with the team and how you operate as individuals, right? And the service that they're getting and the support that they're getting. We did not hear, long, difficult calls for massive change in terms of individual staff or some of those types of things. Certainly, people want more efficient processes and want things to happen faster, and that might not surprise you, but I think that would be a fair sort of mix of responses that we heard, and maybe not a big surprise, but certainly, that you have some critics, but you also have a number of those who would like to partner with you, for example, in number 3.
I guess additionally, in fairness to everyone with the agency historically, I should also ask, what's the best thing that folks had to say about the agency? Which you partly addressed.
They are really, I think people are impressed with your team, the individuals in the field and in the offices. We got a lot of compliments around how you operate with others, and the respect they have for your knowledge in terms of land management, and the network that you have, which we want to grow here as we're articulating. But absolutely, yeah, I think it comes down to people. Commissioner Heath, and then Harvey after that.
So following on Jim's comments, do people mostly interact with the land board through the district managers or through the central office or through what they read? I'm trying to get a sense of how in the future we think about communication.
Yeah, a great question. I mean, certainly all of the above, but many do get out there in the district offices, right? They interact with your field staff, and that's where a lot of the handshakes and those types of things are happening for your lessees. Others may be looking at it from a more of a state house view or some policy view, right? They're not necessarily out there in the field. They're probably interacting with you and in your offices and at the state house. But I think obviously a mix. You're just out there in a number of faces and forums and forums, and so I think wherever you are, you're going to encounter some who work with you and are really pleased and want to keep their relationship the way it is, and then you have a number of others who want to change that and see you do something new. And so I think the challenge is always that you can't be the same and be new at the same time.
Second part of that, which if I can just finish,
yeah, please.
On this goal connected to people, I would really like us to reconsider that first statement about ensure long-term organizational excellence by empowering staff and building diverse networks. I feel like we need to add, after empowering staff, lessees, partners, because what we have to do is so big and so much land that if we don't feel like we have buy-in from our lessees and our partners to all of these things, we just can't go it alone. And, that leads me to one other thing, and that is this. We don't any place in this strategic plan say the word agriculture. And, I feel like for the foreseeable future, it would be a real shame if anybody who was a lessee of ours looked at this whole strategic plan and felt like we didn't even have agriculture as a word that we were considering. So I guess this is a question that I'd like to hear from my colleagues on.
Yes,
I'm really interested in adding to that top partners and lessees.
Yeah, partners and lessees. You had 2 points. I just want to frame up,
Thank
and then a reference to agriculture somewhere
Thank
along
you.
the way. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
I had Commissioner Harvey, and then President Frobe.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Heath completely. I was going to say something similar. And I think I would bring trust up to that subhead as well. Long-term organizational excellence by empowering staff, building trust among our partners and
Yeah, thank you.
first network, something maybe a little less bureaucratic, but it includes both trust and partners. And I also wonder if connected people shouldn't, instead of connected, it should be the gerund connecting. And instead of just people, we need something more specific. Maybe, again, maybe it's connecting partners or something, but people to me seems a bit vague.
Yeah, thank you. We struggle with that frame going back and forth. So connecting partners, for example. Thank you. Commissioner Pribble, did I miss you? Sorry if I did.
Yeah, no. So I just want to commend Josie for picking that out. That is the fact that we don't mention agriculture. If there's been any criticism, and it comes from the fringe of commentary politically in Colorado that I've heard since coming aboard, is that somehow we're disrespectful or insufficiently respectful of the ag community. I think it's an unwarranted and unfair and politically motivated attack, but nonetheless, it does exist. So kudos to Josie and for her sensitivity.
Thank you, Commissioner. President Probe?
Yes, thank you. A couple things. One, to address the fact that agriculture specifically wasn't stated here in the plan. And I'm not being defensive to defend the plan. This is just a personal viewpoint, but this is our plan. This is our institution, our organization. And we do serve a lot of others and connect with others, but it really is our plan about where we want to go and broadcasting how we want to go there, namely with our lessees and our partners, etc., and continuing to be a much more outward facing institution than we had been for many, many years. Having said that, we deal with a lot of different industries, from geothermal to energy or to renewables, other renewables, to oil and gas, to recreation, to agriculture. I personally don't think that it's appropriate to single out any one of those, because all the things that we say we want to do and how we want to do them, we refer to our partners and our lessees as kind of that segment of our ecosystem. So that's sort of kind of my thought I'd like to share with my fellow commissioners. And I also, this goal number 3 is really about our staff. And as I understand the feedback, there hadn't really been as much connection, outreach, and response to staff ideas, perhaps in the past. So this is, again, more of an internal looking goal. And it's really intended to focus on how we connect, our staff to the mission, to the leadership, to commissioners, etc. And it is about building our networks and communicating, but I don't think it's about empowering our partners. I like the idea of the trust building with all the people that we want to work with and partner with. So 2 cents from my side.
Thank you. Commissioner Pribble.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to test everybody's capacity for a little late afternoon humor.
All right.
When I was much younger, I worked as a political organizer and operative, and I one time dedicated an entire legislative session to beating the Farm Bureau at something, anything, just anything, because they were so powerful. Having said that, I'm much more mature now. Some would say even old. And there's, well, I appreciate the chair's point about this goal 3 being more internal focused. There is merit in recognizing or naming symbolically our major partners. Maybe we refer to beyond agriculture. I don't care, but I just say that to raise, see if there's a hint of a smile on anybody's face at 4:10 in the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Scanlon.
I have a smile because we've worked with the Farm Bureau. So I appreciate the story, Jim. I'm wondering, because I think there's a difference between internal and external, empowering internal work and the staff. I think they deserve their own call out in some sense of how we want to do that, versus how we want to increase transparency and outreach and partnership with our partners externally, whether they be lessees or other networks. And I feel like we're blurring that a little bit with this goal 3. And I'm just putting out there, it might be worthy of separating those two ideas a bit. There's similar strategies obviously embedded in there, but I almost would like to see how we want to empower staff. I love how we're calling out the staff and how we want to use this as an opportunity to think differently around how we want to enhance the staff's ideas and strategies, etc. And then it's a different strategy externally with our networks and lessees and other partners that we want to do outreach to.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there might be a division there.
Yeah, I hear that. We were going certainly in 1 and 2, right, to invest directly in staff capabilities and resources and tools and training and all of that. And 3 was designed to start to think about a little bit outside the 4 walls of the board. We didn't get to number 4, which maybe I'll just touch on here in 5. But the idea here was to increase the understanding of the trust value and impact across Colorado, now fully reaching outside the board itself, right? And really thinking about how do we increase support for how the board work delivers for beneficiaries. So that's something that is much more proactive and would require some board help, I think, frankly, around that one. So maybe we can get some commentary there. And then just one moment, Commissioner Heath, I'd just touch on 5 and then we can circle back. But the idea here with 5 was to make sure that as we think about everything that we're doing, some operational consistency and best practice and communications that actually support the implementation of this. So we are thinking of the governance of the plan itself, essentially in 5, and that we come back to each other at periodic points and, for example, annually, and revisit the plan a little bit and decide, is it making progress in a way that you like? Are there things that would need to be adjusted or amended, for example? It's a big lift, right, to change your strategy, but it is a living document in some ways. And we don't want to necessarily go 5 years with something that we know we want to change and not be able to do so. So that's what we mean by operational consistency and communication on number 5. And I'll just
and Brian, I'm just going to amend my suggestion. Maybe it's just strategic embedded within goal 3. Strategic objectives, staff, strategic objectives, labeling it differently, external partners and networks, just to call out the 2 so that they're not blended into one list.
Yeah, I got your point. And okay, thank you so much. Commissioner Heath.
Well, by following a bit on that, but I thought about connections and people. I guess I did not see this as an internal document, Deb, with staff. First of all, we have such an expanse of land and such an important fiduciary responsibility that even if we have the best staff in the world, which we do, we can't do it without external partners. And I think an example is if a lessee learns better land management through being a lessee with us, be pretty sure he or she might also have private land that they manage, and let's hope that they take what they learn from us and they do that on their own private land, and it enhances that land as well. So I feel like when we use in this section of connecting, it may even be that Director Rose Marino has a separate document that's just for staff on all these ways this is implemented. But I really want number 3 to be not just internal, but external.
Thank you. President Frobe?
Yes, and Josie, I agree, and maybe I misspoke. I was really thinking about the empowerment piece here. We building partnerships, as we talk about in 3, well, really 3, and also it relates to 5 here. That is sort of a cross-cutting strategy for the whole organization. It affects the revenue side and is essential to the revenue
Yeah.
side. We speak about it a lot on the land side, where your example is exactly right. We absolutely have to partner with the various communities of lessees that are out there because we can't possibly do it ourselves. We're an asset manager, not an operator. So no, but necessarily, I was speaking specifically that for the staff here, this was real. It was important to most of the people I worked with on those 2 days to really convey the message to staff as to how important they are and the culture we're trying to build together, and to show that we've heard staff and we want to highlight a goal regarding their relationship with the organization. We also have these others, to Christine's point, that are helping sort of set forth the expectations for everybody in the organization to develop these networks based on trust and to demonstrate the consistent decision making that the organization and the board makes. So I don't know how to parse that, but that's kind of what I was trying to get across.
Okay.
So sorry if I was confusing.
Commissioner Harvey?
Well, I wonder if under number 2, we should get the verb invest in there, invest in staff, invest in their education. I like empower, but I think it'd be nice to have the word invest in staff, invest in their whatever their improvement, their evolve, their education, their growth, all that sort of thing. It's just a little, you could keep empower, but I think invest is a bit stronger in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
I like that too.
Good feedback. Director?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So there's the subhead, and then there are the strategic objectives. And I think invest is in strategic objective number 1. And I think a lot of what we're talking about with partnerships is in number 3. But what I'm hearing is in the subhead, we want, specific call out of lessees and partners. We want to talk about investing in staff versus empowering them. So just want to make sure I'm tracking the feedback.
Mm-hmm. I'm hearing those.
I think it's important to empower and invest in staff. And I just, from my perspective, it's really important that staff aren't blurred with our external relationships, that it's very, very clear that we are prioritizing staff in these ways. So that's why I asked maybe that they get their own call out as with their own objectives reflected in this plan. So it's so we can both go back and measure that and evaluate how we're doing. And are we really walking the talk of this plan with our staff and the team? And that's a very different evaluation than it is with our external networks and partners. And that's why I want it called out, so it's not blurred with our other goals that we're doing. And I think they deserve that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Scanlon, your observation really tracks with what we heard from staff. So, thank you.
Okay, so some good feedback here around the language, the focus of some of these. What else do we have? What's some other feedback you have for us? Commissioner Heath.
I'd like to go back to the very first part where we talk about our vision, mission, tagline.
Sure.
And I would like to propose that after that we drop the 3 words and of other beneficiaries. I think that's like an invitation to people who are currently struggling with budget and they go, oh, good, that could be a good place for us to find some money. I just think we fund schools or public education, whatever we decide to put there, but I think we should drop and other beneficiaries.
From the mission. Yep. I see it there. Reaction to that? President Frobe? Get the mute.
Commissioner Heath, I really agree and see that we're trying to include, there's 6 other trusts or whatever, but I agree with you. I'm all for everything we do is pretty much for public schools, and hopefully everybody else understands.
Yeah.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Sorry, muted. Can we add in just for public schools and wherever the official language is of the trust without diving into the beneficiaries?
Okay.
What's our trust called, Ed? I just always say the trust.
You there, Ed?
Yeah, no, it's just the buttons aren't working. So what everybody's struggling with is you don't have one trust. You have 8. And so and there's not really an official name for any of them, but for the school trust, that's people just generally refer to it as the school lands trust. Sometimes just the school trust, but you've obviously and currently some other high profile trusts that you manage, even though they're very much smaller, are things like the Internal Improvements Trust, which CPW is a beneficiary of, the Salines Trust, which is also CPW is a designated beneficiary of. You have the Penitentiary Trust Lands, you have the Hesperus Trust. So I think what was trying to be captured here was, and Commissioner Heath's comments ring loud and clear to me about what many others may see when they see other beneficiaries. But what was trying to be captured there was those other 7 or 8 trusts that you guys don't really work with all that often, but on occasion, and that you're equally responsible for on those lands as well. I haven't chewed much with the thought of just dropping other beneficiaries and sort of as Commissioner Scanlon
Yeah,
said.
that was a good idea. And substitute other beneficiaries as defined in the Constitution or something that narrows it.
Right.
Okay, and Mark, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in ahead.
We can chew on trying to figure out how to do that glibly and efficiently, and try to capture that.
Commissioner Harvey?
Well, this might border on North Korean cultishness, but those 3 goals are really nicely defined. I know we need some refinement and a bit of wordsmithing, but I wonder if we condense that into 1 page, if it should be on the beginning of every board packet, just to remind us, because it to me, even better than the mission statement and the vision, it really outlines the specifics of what we're trying to accomplish.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Harvey, what are you actually referencing? You said at the very top.
The three goals.
The three goals. Okay.
The goals that we've just been over.
Yes, the new three goals. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. That's really helpful. Connected people, resilient lands.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that a ton, Mark. That's a great idea.
That would be consistent with how we want you to operate in general, right? Is to have faith, be faithful, and have fidelity to this plan. Reference this plan when you're making tough decisions. You know, does this fit in the plan right now? And so that level of habitual reference is what I would recommend, certainly, and is good practice.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe since we took a turn back to the whys, Aaron, can we go back to the single view, the big map? Thanks. So we are here. We got about a half hour left still of some dialogue, if you like, and happy to take this any direction that you would feel is appropriate. Maybe looking at all of them at once will help. Okay. Well, let's talk about some next steps then. I think that would be appropriate for everyone here. So where do we go from here? We have a couple thoughts on that. So, oh, yeah, there it is. Thank you. So we're thinking about implementation, right? We'll make adjustments and try to come back with things that sort of resonate more clearly and incorporate the feedback that we've heard today at our next meeting. And then at least for now, at least turn your attention to then what? So starting in July, as we think about this, well, obviously, so the strategy team will approve the plans and identify those resources that are working once we've got formal approval and ready to move forward. And we expect the strategy team to continue to champion for change as we look forward on this and help to coordinate the results of this across the agency. The leadership team has a special role here to remove some barriers and facilitate some of the needs, resources that folks are going to need. That may mean unlocking some budget in some cases. That may mean, providing additional folks or redirecting some tasks and so on. And then we anticipate a number of project teams to be spun up here that will be charged with actually delivering on those specific objectives. And some of them are consistent with what they're doing already, and they'll reframe that a little bit or refocus on some things that are going on today, and it will not be a big shock. But others, it may be over time, there are some new areas here that need to be addressed and some big challenges that require some project work. And so in those cases, we may need to get together a project plan and have folks actually managing the project on a day-to-day basis, let's say for 6 months or 9 months or a year, to realize, for example, that asset allocation strategy, some of those others. And just to talk a little bit about strategic planning accountability, and this is a big theme for GPS and myself and Aaron. We know that the time and investment in developing the strategy and working through all this and communicating this out to all those that you serve is an enormous investment and requires a commensurate level of accountability and follow through, right? We cannot do all this work and not actually execute and achieve these objectives. It would be negligence in some way. And we don't want to foster that at all. So we're thinking about your ability on an annual basis, for example, to update and report back to you what is actually happening around the strategy and what is the accountability to that. And we want to make sure that the board has a role there in seeing the progress that's being made each year on those annual plans, and then celebrating the wins and making sure that folks feel the love when they've done the right thing and delivered on the strategy. So please think about how we can do that in advance, and define the cadence that allows you to know the strategy is being worked and the results are coming back to you. And so as far as the strategic plan rollout, so you might think about, okay, so now we have the document. It's been wordsmithed and refined, one more round here over the next month, and we get to a place of consensus. Then what, right? Well, we've been thinking about, for example, stakeholders identified in the strategic plan as a key tool to increase transparency and strengthen trust. Dissemination of the plan is going to be critical to making sure those partners are aware and engaged with us. So we're really thinking here about when the plan is built, we're actually going to develop a number of cover notes that go back to the individual folks, for example, who participated in the strategy and in our interviews and our focus groups and so on, as well as all those key folks that you serve, and from a stakeholder perspective. And then we want to distribute this largely by email, and get that into people's inboxes right away. If they have a special request for a hard copy or something, they think we can make those available, we've said, on an as needed basis. And then the key thing is really the follow-up over time with those relationships and the personal connections to, okay, did you have a chance to review it? What do you think? Here's where we're going. And you have those follow-ups. So with that in mind, what other rollout components would you all like to see as we, assuming that we get through the next month here? Commissioner Harvey.
Yeah, Brian and Aaron, does your contractor services include follow-up beyond the release of the plan, or is that where it ends?
No, we'll wrap up with you all here in late May, early June.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
I was just gonna ask anyone, how do we make? I've been involved with a few other strategic plans before, and some just get, the flavor gets dropped as soon as the plan comes out, and so I'm just curious how the board staff plans to, actually live up to some of this stuff. More of a question.
Yeah, absolutely. We've provided a lot of thoughts around that. Emily, you want to respond there? Thanks.
Sure, thanks. It's a great question, Mark. So this is Emily Barbo, your Public Information Officer. Part of our strategy in thinking about how does this plan benefit us? How can we put it to work? And especially capture all of those folks in those conversations that Brian and Aaron had, who said they want to have closer relationships with us and that they have resources that we can tap into. So that is driving a lot of the distribution plan that the leadership team has been thinking about of, we're going to take these words that we've been discussing today and these goals and create a report about the process a little bit, but really about what it is we're saying our vision is for the next 5 years and how we want to do it. And then working with Director Rosmarino and President Frobe to invite follow-up conversations with those especially specific stakeholders and set meetings. And so there will be very specific touch points where we can, call people in saying, here are our values, here's what we've stated, and here's where we think there's a place for you to be involved. In particular, there are two main groups that I think are just primed for this kind of engagement, and that's our legislators at the state level, but also the local folks at the commissioner level, the county commissioner level. I think there's quite a lot of opportunity there to both step up in a way that's meaningful and that we've heard that folks want. And also we're thinking a lot about the education space. How can we engage the best board of directors? and thinking about how we do our work and inviting those conversations really directly. So those are just two groups in particular that we're thinking about how do we call them in. And part of that is this, we have this cool new report, this shiny, beautiful thing that we're going to be able to send people either digitally or physically. And how can we use it to actualize it? So that's the part of the thinking of at least for me, my next steps. I hope that helps.
Director?
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Emily. I think that's very helpful. I also wanted to point out, and I think it's coming on the next slide, Commissioner Harvey, this plan and specifically the 3 goals are going to be very much tied to our annual business planning that we currently do. But we're going to keep doing it. There you go. Thanks, Brian. And then the second thing is, the clarity of those 3 goals, which I'm glad you appreciate. You'll see those in board cover sheets, so you'll know exactly what that proposal is really driving at in terms of the goals. So this will be very integrated. It won't be sitting on a shelf collecting dust. It'll be very, very obvious throughout our work, throughout the year. So thanks for that question.
President Frobe.
Thank you. Actually, go to the one you were just on, Brian, if you would. That slide. Yeah, there we go. Just for the benefit of the other commissioners, because I had not really been in touch with this till the last meeting. So this is the high level objectives underneath the mission, vision, and foundational principle. And then there will be project teams built underneath each of these objectives to achieve very specific steps, very specific outcomes, I mean. So on one hand, I look at the strategic plan and the objectives, and I don't really see any numbers. And Brian has raised that in my life. If you can't measure it, it doesn't matter. But because of the nature of our work, I would suggest that we'll be looking more towards numbers and measures of the activities and the outcomes that that the organization is going to undertake underneath each of the objectives. So I think that's what these next steps are, is anchoring the work to the plan. Those are some of the project teams and the specific work and quantitative outcomes that will move the organization towards those high level goals that we've discussed today. So I don't know, Director Rosmarino, do you have anything to add to that process, or Nick?
No, well said, Chair.
Yeah, thank you so much. Any other questions here broadly about how we've come here, what we've produced, where we're going next? We've shared a lot of information today, obviously, and appreciate all the feedback that you've given us. Certainly, we'll put our heads down and think about how do we adapt to that and come forward with something that represents a consensus.
No, excellent work. Really, really good work. Appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you. We've had a really good team and a lot of good folks participating. So it's been exciting.
So I guess just process-wise, when will we see the next version of this?
Brian, I think I can speak to that.
Yes, please.
And thank you, Commissioner Heath. And you were going right where I was going, which is just a reminder for the public that I'd love to thank the attendees for listening to this conversation. Hope you're as excited about the strategic direction of the State Land Board as I am. So staff is going to consider the feedback that we got today and from the board. And then there is that open invitation for anyone to send me comments, reflections by April 30th. And we'll weave that together, and then we'll, at the May 13th board workshop, provide you with any revisions and a description of the feedback on which it's based, in addition to the board's feedback. And then we will provide this for your consideration for approval at the May 14th business meeting. So you will get that board packet. Let's see, that would be by the May 6th. So that's the window that staff has to put that together, is between April 30th and May 6th. So that will be provided to you, Commissioner Heath, and published on our website, and all the other commissioners as well.
Yeah, excellent. Any other questions about where we go next or what to expect? Okay, well, I'll roll up my microphone here. I thank everyone so much for the attention to the details and your feedback today. We've got a lot of good notes, to go over, and as Director Rosmarino just stated, we'll share those back to you all within another more refined session at the next moment we can. Any final thoughts?
Thanks for all your work.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And thanks to all of you folks who are listening in, who've been involved with the input for this document.
Yeah, I want to second that. Thank you, Commissioner Heath. Thank you to all the stakeholders that have been engaged. And thank you again to GPS for your extraordinary efforts on our behalf.
Pleasure.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Folks, I think that's what we had for the agenda today. So I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar, but glad you could join us. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to connect with Director Rosmarino at the email we provided, or reach out to anybody you know on staff. Happy to talk through things. So thanks again. Have a great day. Look forward to seeing you next time.